Hello, good evening, and welcome to SABC2's Poetry Hour. My name is Wendell Smythe Hendrickse, and this next to me is Wheeler. And tonight, Wheeler will be reading a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Just a little joke there.
Very
Wheeler,
good.
take it away.
Very good. But first, the intro for the dead poets. I went into the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach. It's not good when you cock up your poem, hey? And when I came to die, I discovered that I had not yet lived. I did not wish to live without what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation until it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life.
Yeah, there's a lot of big words there. Big words, very popular in poetry.
Now, sucking out the marrow is something I like with a potjie, especially.
Right, yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Anyway, this is the podcast where good trivia gets rewarded and bad lies are punished. But will we catch the lies? This is What's the Fact?
Hello, yes, my name is Ryan Whittle. This is Warren Robertson, and welcome to the show. In case you haven't guessed it, Dietz is going to regret himself that he's given us the topic of poetry.
Poetry this evening,
Poems, poets, hence the
yeah. Hence the beret.
yes.
I mean,
Perfect.
it's not
Yes,
a
perfect.
strictly military beret, is it, Ryan?
No,
There
I
we
like
go.
to
Now
think
people can
it's-
actually see.
I like to think it's a poetic beret. I like to think I look
It's your
refined.
grandmother's church beret, is what it is. I think.
Dear old thing.
Dear-
But I think it gives a certain refinement. I found it in a thrift shop in Observatory
right. Right.
on a Sunday afternoon,
Uh huh.
and there was no one at the cashier, so I just said goodbye.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, look,
they're
let's
very.
be honest. You can't really sell that thing for very much anyway. So,
I think it was in the help yourself basket.
yes, I'm fairly certain it was. But at least we now know what happened to Tinky Winky. Anyway, good poetry, Ryan.
Poetry, yes. So that was the intro to the Dead Poets Society. I'm in love with that movie. Yes.
Right, right.
And there's a question coming up later in the show about Dead Poets
I think the reason
Society.
you're in love with that movie is that you didn't actually go to an all boys school.
No, I did.
Did you?
But that movie I watched in Standard 5, and I was like, I want to go to an all boys school.
Right,
So
okay.
I went to Potch. But the irony is that movie is a bit like
It's sort of anti.
all boys schools suck.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get that message. I was like, I want to go there.
Okay, so you went to a co-ed junior school. There were
Yeah.
girls, and you were just like, I'm bored of these guys. Like, I want to go where all the boys get together in a cave and read poems to each other.
Yeah, I like, and there was bagpipes, which our school never had. But
There were
bagpipes.
early signs, Ryan, that your life was going in the direction it has gone. Let's be honest. But good, we've got 5 facts each this evening, or
Yes.
five facts or lies this evening on
Oh,
poetry.
yes.
And then obviously the multiple choice round, and we're gonna score some points. I know I went first last week, which
Good.
means that you're first up this week.
All right. Well, my first poem is all about Edgar Allan Poe. You know, he was a poet also.
Did I?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He wrote The Raven.
Mhm.
The Raven. It's a beautiful poem. It starts like this: Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. To some visitor I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more.
The funny thing is for me when you read that to me, like the definitive version is James Earl Jones doing it on The Simpsons.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Did he
yeah.
do it
I
on
mean,
The
as soon as you got James Earl Jones's voice doing that, it really becomes a thing. Yeah, in one of their Halloween episodes, one of the early Halloween episodes, yeah,
Really?
they did a version of that. Yeah,
Did he do the whole thing?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, my fact is the crux of this poem. I don't know. I won't say it's the final line, but it's the most important line. Is did he who made the lamb make thee? Question mark. That's my fact.
You're saying that's the most important line, and that's your
from the
fact.
Raven. Yeah, did he who make the lamb make thee?
I'm not sure that defining what is the most important line in any poem is helpful, because without any of the others, what does that mean?
Well, it's the point of it. It's
Oh, it's the kind of.
it's the kind of.
So are you saying is the question, did God make this startling raven that is visiting him in his nightmares and tormenting him? And
I mean, you're so good at understanding poetry, but I guess that is the meaning. Yeah, did he who make the lamb make thee? Yeah.
so then is it what? Is it did the same thing that gives you peace and comfort also create the things that torment you?
Wow.
I don't know. I'm sort of.
That is
I'm winging it.
That is pretty good, but so is that?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, as I say, I don't know whether it's the most important
No,
line.
but
It clearly is to you, though.
Is it the line from the Raven?
Oh, I see. I don't know. I don't know how. I can't remember how it ends. If I'm honest, I remember nevermore all the time. Nevermore.
And the name Lenore.
Yes, yes. Lenore feels like one of those things where they call it, what's it, artistic license. Where we're gonna shoehorn in.
You needed
Like
a
there was
word,
no
man.
Lenore. Lenore's not a name. I've never met a Lenore. I've met Eleanor, but Eleanor's obviously got one kind of half beat too many there, so he had to chop it and kind of say Lenore. It's like and I can't remember who the poet is who wrote Tiger Tiger Burning Bright, and then they say your fiery eye or golden eye rhymes with symmetry instead of symmetry.
Yeah, that's right.
It's that artistic license. Sometimes it should be called artistic taking the piss. Quite honestly, I think Lenore is one of those situations where come on, Edgar, come on, you're getting paid for this shit. A little more effort, please.
And he did make it his entire life, which was cut short, as an almost full-time writer. Shame, poor bastard.
Yeah, the end of his life is quite interesting because he was discovered in a town kind of far away from home without his clothes on.
Yeah, someone else's clothes on.
Yeah, that's right.
A bit mad.
Yeah, and a bit mad, and deceased, and then they didn't know how he'd gotten there or what he was doing there, or so ultimately Edgar Allan Poe's end is almost as grisly as some of his stories, I suppose.
They don't know what killed him. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know what the closing lines of that poem are. I can't remember.
But is it
something about did the lamb?
Did he who make the lamb make thee?
I would like to believe he'd rhyme it, with nevermore at the end. I would love to see him put a little bit of effort in. You black whore,
He did. That's
is that the final line? That's fine. Wing away from here, you raven son of a bitch.
Fly, Lenore.
Yeah.
You black whore.
Yeah, you pitch black birdie
pitch
whore.
black,
Yeah.
You pitch black raven whore.
Yeah. I don't know. Yes, I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say it's the truth. I'm gonna say that's what's luring you in on this poem. Are you starting with a lie, Ryan? Is that what you're doing?
I am. Of course I'm starting with a lie. And what you've witnessed is it's so ironic that we started with Edgar Allan Poe, because one of his famous short stories is A Telltale Heart,
Right.
which is about a guy who talks too much and then ends up confessing the murder.
Yes.
And you spoke about the Raven, and then you mention out of the blue Tiger, or the Tiger.
Yeah.
Did he who make the lamb make thee is from
Tiger,
Tiger,
oh, really? There we go. That happens to me quite a lot. Just nonsense. Just rubbish comes out of my mouth.
And then you made the subconscious connection. And but what I found interesting about the legacy of the Tiger is, of course, when Tiger Woods started doing all sorts of wonderful things in golf, the headlines are always Tiger Burning Bright.
Oh, yeah.
Which is straight from William Blake's poem. So, no, there you have it. That doesn't appear in the Raven. It appears in the Tiger. So did he who make the lamb make thee? It was also William Blake talking about the ferocious tiger. And it's like, how could God create beautiful things like a lamb, peaceful, non-violent things?
Oh, right. But he's talking about the tiger, yeah.
And he goes through the whole, forging of everything that's ferocious about a tiger.
See, that was very clever of you. You're kind of linking those two poems like that, because
but
thematically they are. There is some similarity there, I suppose.
You see, I tricked you. That's
what
I love doing.
You lured me in with your lies.
Yes,
your lies. I want to trust you, Ryan, but you're like an ever cheating husband. All
I'm
right.
drinking the Vice from Woodstock Breweries. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking the pale ale from
We
Woodstock
really
Brewery.
should be drinking fancy wine, but cheers.
I know. It's not very poetry to be drinking beer, is it? But all right, I've got a little fact.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. The fact is this: that based on memorials and statues, the world's greatest ever poet is Robbie Burns. Based on the number of memorials and statues, the world's greatest poet would be Robbie Burns.
Wow. Yes, great Scottish poet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Memorials and statues. Why?
Yeah.
Why would Robert Burns have so many memorials and statues? Oh, maybe because a lot of his stuff was fitting for the dead. For that reason, I'll say it. I was going to say the Bard. Surely it's Shakespeare. Surely it's
A lot of his
Shakespeare.
stuff was fitting for the dead. I'd like you to kind of expand on that because I'm struggling to imagine that. Was that really a thing?
No, is a lot of his poems, aren't they quoted at funerals and things like that?
I mean, there are poems that are quoted at funerals, but not. I don't think because sort of thematically they are about the dead. There are. I mean, obviously he has one particularly memorable poem is about parting and the bittersweet sorrow of losing someone. A fond kiss, which is actually about him breaking up with his wife at the time, and he used to cheat on her all the time, and he was a bit of a bastard, and he used to cheat on her all the time, and eventually she was like, I can't take this anymore, and they split, and he wrote a fond kiss, and then we sever, aye, farewell, alas, forever. Wow. And then he got over it quite quickly, and he landed up having 12 kids, the last of whom was called Max and was born on the day that it was his funeral. So he had kids right up until he died.
It's based on a true event.
Yeah, but she, on the other hand, her name was Nancy. She, on the other hand, spent 40 years every year on his on the day that he broke up with her, the 12th or the 13th of December, writing in her journal. Today's that day. So she missed him for the next 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so Robbie Burns, anyway, he's a big kind of big figure in the Scottish, but I don't know whether it's about death or.
I'll say statues and memorials. Yes, it's the truth, because I think, for example, if it says "the Lord is my shepherd" on tombstones, that would mean that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think for that reason, Robbie Burns, yes.
Oh no, I'm talking. No, hang on. Well, let's exclude that then. I'm talking specific memorials, and statues of Robbie Burns and to Robbie Burns.
It's got to be William Shakespeare. I would go with Shakespeare. Or Milton, maybe John Milton, but no. Or even, not that he wrote poems, but Chaucer. But no, he wasn't really poetry. But I'll say no, it's Shakespeare. It's not Robbie Burns.
So there is only one source for this, and that is the Scottish government, who have claimed that this is in fact true. And the reason why they believe it's true, because there's been no real kind of accounting. It's more like an apocryphal thing. So we can, Dietz can decide how he wants to split these points. But the reason why it's true is because so many Scottish people left Scotland, and then they took Robbie Burns and his poetry with them. And quite a lot of his poetry is like a big part of Scottish life, and not just Scottish life, but he wrote Auld Lang Syne, which isn't only it's a New Year's song that's sung around the world, and it's a song that's sung in China as a kind of meeting of friends type of scenario. So, but what they believe is that so many Scottish people left and took Robbie Burns with them, and then erected statues and monuments. So there's statues and monuments to him in Australia, in New Zealand. Wow. There's towns named after him or named after his old farm in America, in New Zealand. There's and obviously Scotland itself has got loads of statues and memorials to him. In 2009, he was voted the greatest ever living Scotsman, ahead of William Wallace and like all these kind of Robert Bruce and
Andy Murray, the tennis player.
Yeah, I mean, who could if you can believe it. But yeah, so he's a kind of a figure that's core to the Scottish experience. So the Scottish government believes that they actually say that after Queen Victoria and Christopher Columbus, he's got the most statues, if you exclude religious figures. Wow. So there, yeah.
Queen Victoria, Christopher Columbus. What a hell of a fact.
So that's what the Scottish government says. I don't know. They don't appear to have any numbers to back it up, if I'm honest. I did have a look. But what's interesting is he really did have a bit of an impact that went beyond just the name Robbie Burns. I think when you mention someone like Shakespeare or Milton, or people know the stature of these guys, but they don't necessarily know the stature of Robbie Burns. Like some interesting stuff I found out. John Steinbeck's classic 1937 novel of Mice and Men took its name from a line in the Burns poem "To a Mouse, the best laid schemes of mice and men gone after gley," which is so that's Robbie Burns. J.D. Salinger's 1951 novel "The Catcher in the Rye" is based on the title of Robert Burns' poem "Coming Through the Rye." So, he's, and of course, Auld Lang Syne is, it's in the Guinness Book of Records as being the third most popular song in the world after Happy Birthday and for He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
Good grief.
So, yeah.
Jeez, wow.
So, he's had this impact that I think extends long beyond what most people would say. So there you are. Oh, according to memorials and statues and the Scottish government alone, the American government believes that person at the top of the pile would be Abraham Lincoln. And listen, let's be honest, they have tried their very best within America to raise statues to Abraham Lincoln. But I think outside of America, there aren't any statues to Abraham Lincoln, whereas Robbie Burns has extended beyond his own home country to have memorials. So there you are.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And not to mention, most hospitals have a Burns unit.
That's correct. Yeah. But so there's a thing that they do, and I think it's 25th of January every year, which is I think it's his memorial night, and it's called Burns Night, and Scottish people get together and they read his poems and they eat haggis and toast with whiskey and read his poems. It's a kind of classic thing that people still do. Wow, and that tradition started just a couple of years after his death, which was in the early 1800s.
Good grief.
So yeah, there you are.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to jump forward to the 20th century and even 21st century because he's still doing his thing. Bob Dylan, I would consider him a wonderful poet.
Sure, Ryan. Have you run out of poets?
Yes, I've already run out. I've done
Edgar Allan Poe, William Blake, and now you're done.
There. No, shucks. No, but I've got a few more. But I actually had two for Edgar, but maybe I'll come to Edgar's one later. Another one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're talking to somebody who has particular, I'd say, antipathy would be a kind way of saying for how I feel about Bob Dylan.
Antipathy.
Yeah.
That means you don't like him.
I just I don't care for him.
Wow,
I don't
him.
particularly. I think that would be he's meh.
Wow.
Me.
No,
yeah, so,
no, I think.
So no. And believe me.
Have you been exposed to his stuff though?
No, I've been exposed to his stuff. I just, I mean.
What I mean by that?
Yeah, is not has he shown you his cock? No, I've heard his music, but I mean, there are people that I know well and trust and love, who love Bob Dylan, and I've just never really kind of gotten it, I suppose.
No, I do love Bob. What really got me into Bob Dylan was my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if you know what it is. My favorite movie.
Your favorite? Wait, hang on. I'll be able to get this. It's Despicable Me 2. It's the Minions movie. No, wait. Give me another guess. Give me another chance. Another bite at the apple. It's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, that was nice. I didn't see the ending, and I did read the book. But there's a short picture book, but I haven't seen the ending. The car flies from Europe to Paris, from Europe to London.
I mean, it's bed knobs and broomsticks. They used to make a lot of movies about magical shit that flew back in the 60s.
No, anyway. my favorite movie is about magic. It's Jerry Maguire, and I thought it was a magic movie. It's just magic. Okay. No, but I love Jerry Maguire for all sorts of reasons. I love Tom. Tom's wonderful. I love Tom. But the movie
I
ends
mean,
with...
that's a whole therapy season, you know. There's 12 heavy therapy sessions in there.
I love Tom.
Okay.
Fucker.
All right.
And the movie ends with a Bob Dylan track as it credits roll, and it's so beautiful. And it's called "Shelter from the Storm." I don't know if you know it.
No.
The opening verse is, "'Twas in another lifetime." Must I do it like Bob
Yeah,
Dylan?
yeah, yeah. You've got to do it like Bob Dylan.
"'Twas in another lifetime, one of toil and blood, when blackness was a virtue and the road was full of mud. I came in from the wilderness, a creature void of form. Come in," she said, "I give you shelter from the storm."
I do know the song. You see,
that's
that's how good you
lovely.
were. That's
That's
how
a-
good you were. I'd like to get a memory, yeah.
So what's nice about that song is he goes on, it's very deep, it's quite spiritual in some ways. And in one of the final few verses, he has a bunch of words where he is basically stating that he is sort of Krishna, the Hindu god.
So Bob Dylan is claiming he's Krishna. I mean, that's
in
that's
Shelter
a
from the Storm.
pretty bold statement, you know.
I know, that's what he's
I mean,
doing.
you're like...
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably 1 billion people in India right now. If they were listening, just, fuck that motherfucker. We're going to kick his ass. It's the worst Indian accent in the whole world. But
I mean, if you think about it, George Harrison, the Beatles went on a Indian pilgrimage to find some spiritual meaning.
Yeah, and of
So
course,
George
the spiritual
Harrison
meaning
actually-
was Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and George Harrison, then he kind of became Hare Krishna after that. The others not so much, although Paul McCartney went vegetarian after that. John Lennon decided, so I'm probably
Yeah, but
atheist.
we're not talking about people who went vegetarian or who had a kind of spiritual moment. Which, by the way, India has a problem with. I don't know if we're allowed to take this little like aside. No,
I agree.
Westerners
Bacon
coming
is
to
so
India.
nice.
No, Westerners coming to India on these spiritual journeys, and then some of them there's actually a
Then
like
they
a
don't want to
mental-
go.
No,
home.
there's like a mental condition that happens where people kind of lose themselves in these spiritual journeys, and then they vanish, and then their families find them 20 years later living in a temple, and they haven't spoken to their families in 20 years. They just kind of vanish. So, and India's got a real kind of, you know, I mean, what a pain in the arse that must be. You know, like imagine Americans coming over, ruining your country with their shit, having their little epiphanies and going vegan and thinking that suddenly they're spiritual. And now Bob Dylan says he's fucking Krishna. I promise you, I will help them fuck him up. I will help them fuck up Bob Dylan. I mean, assuming that your fact is true, right?
It is such a problem because, I mean, they've come as tourists, they've spent all their dollars. Now the poor temple has got to feed them, and clothe them.
Right. It's like we're like, just go home. Did you ever see Ace Ventura 2?
Yes.
Yeah, where they go and they find him in the temple.
Yes.
His name is Ace Ventura. We have no names here. He bends down and speaks out of his bottom. Or him. that thing, that's how I feel like every temple must feel like when an American shows up on their doorstep, keen to stay. You know, if this is true about Bob Dylan, you've just enraged me further about him. Like our honesty.
So are you saying it's true?
I'm prepared to believe it. I'm so like I'm absolutely on edge here.
Yeah. Well, I'm being a deceptive dick again.
Thank goodness, because honestly, that's a terrible thing for him to have done.
He is. I think he's being more sort of messianic in a Christian sense. I think he's comparing himself to Jesus.
I mean, that's a bit much too, isn't it?
Yeah. But it is beautiful.
To be fair, he's comparing himself to Jesus. John Lennon said he was bigger than Jesus.
Well, what I meant was I was bigger than Bob Dylan. I thought, that's not a very good Liverpool accent. I thought, then I was meant to say I was bigger than Bob Dylan. It came out I was bigger than Jesus but Bob called himself Jesus, didn't he, Paul? Oh, he sure did.
It sounds a bit more Mancunian, I think.
I fucked up the Liverpool accent. It was in this verse. You'll hear what it is. I'll sing it again in the Bob Dylan song. Suddenly I turned around and she was standing there with silver bracelets on her wrists and flowers in her hair. She walked up to me so gracefully and took my crown of thorns. Come in, she said, I give you shelter from the storm.
Well,
Took my crown of thorns.
yeah, but Ryan, I think you may be reaching. I mean, listen, the crown of thorns is more a symbol for trials and tribulations. So it's more because Jesus' crown of thorns has come to represent
no, but
humanity's
there's
trials and
more.
tribulations over time. Oh, is there more? All right.
Well, I don't know it off by heart. But they gambled for my clothes. That's another line
really?
in the
Okay.
in a later verse. They gambled for my clothes, which is at the crucifixion.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound very suspicious, Bob. Bob, if you can write in the comments, let us know. Do you think you're Jesus? Yeah,
We're more popular
if
than
anyone
Jesus.
who knows Bob could give him a call, tell him to leave a comment. We'd
I think we're
appreciate
more
it.
popular than Jesus. I think he might have had a bit of a evangelical foray as well, old Bob.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I
Wait,
mean, I
here it
knew there
is.
were many reasons I didn't like him, but these things that are coming out now give me good reason.
As this, in a little hilltop village, they gambled for my clothes. I bargained for salvation, and she gave me a lethal dose. I offered up my innocence. I got repaid with scorn. Come in, she said, I give you shelter from the storm.
You know, I mean, I admire his rhyming there. Because rhyming the word scorn and storm is great. I personally, immediately, as soon as I hear the word scorn, I want to rhyme it with porn. I mean, I don't know what that says about me. There's this Freudian psychoanalyst watching this going, oh, do you rhyme scorn and porn? Why is that, Warren?
I offered up
What
my
do you think that
innocence. I
means?
got repaid with porn.
I mean, fair enough. That's what we've all done in the age of the internet, isn't it?
I've deceived you twice in a row. I actually don't know if I'm telling the truth at all in this episode.
No, yeah, look, I don't know if you're telling the truth at all in the podcast. I'm struggling to remember a moment.
So was Bob.
Listen, so you talk about the Beatles and Bob Dylan and kind of these big guys thinking that they're like Jesus, but which reminds me quite a lot of Lord Byron. Lord Byron was huge as a poet. He was, we can only really equate people's love for Lord Byron with that kind of Beatlemania. They in fact called it Byromania in his era for this kind of love of Byron. And he literally he said he wrote he wrote one poem. He wrote it's Herald the Pilgrim, and I can't remember the full name of the poem, but he wrote Herald the Pilgrim, which was like a story about himself and his voyages through kind of Europe, and he wrote it as a poem. And he described it. He said, "I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was famous." And and there's stories that women used to send him letters, like anonymous letters telling him they wanted his babies. And this in an era where people were mostly quite prudish,
What a rock star.
Yeah. So it's called. I've got it actually written here. It's called Child Harold's Pilgrimage. There you are. But yeah, no, he was an absolute rock star. He he went to university, and I think he went to Cambridge, if I remember correctly. And he went there, and he wanted to take his dog, and they said to him, "No, your dogs are not allowed." So he bought a bear, and he had a bear as a pet that he took to university. Like on a leash, he used to walk his bear around campus. Like fucking head case. He was like in this era. He's bisexual. He's sleeping with men and women, and he said men are smarter, but women kiss better. And and he didn't have like threesomes or he'd have like 5 sims.
Wow.
So which results in him at the age of 21, he's got raging syphilis and gonorrhea already by the time he's 21.
Shame.
He's got he was born with a club foot that he was very ashamed of, and yet he was this real, sex symbol. Like everybody basically wanted to sleep with him. But my story about him, my fact about him, is that he so he became Lord at the age of 10, because what happened is his father died when he was very young, and then his uncle died when he was 10 years old. So he inherited the lordship at the age of 10, and unfortunately the lordship came with a lot of debt. So his whole life is kind of weighed under by this debt but he's got this estate. And so he used to throw these big parties at the estate because, that's who he was. And what he did was there used to be an abbey on the estate, and they dug up all the bodies of the monks, and he used to use the monks' skulls as goblets, and they dug up all his ancestors, and they used to use the skulls of his ancestors as flower pots. So that's my fact.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa. Oh, my. And the era, more or less, 1800s.
1800s, yeah. So he was born, I think, 1788. Yeah. So
Oh,
this is
my
kind of
goodness
early
me.
1800s.
And where
1810.
was his estate?
I mean, in England. Yeah.
Goodness me. You don't know where
I don't know specifically where, no. I mean, not off the top of my head, but yeah.
Sacrilege, eh?
Yeah.
No, I think it's too far.
No, I mean,
for an Englishman, it's too far for an Englishman to go.
let me perhaps maybe fill you in with a little bit more fact then. So he does leave very famously. Byron left England, and he left it under something of a cloud.
To go to Paris.
Well, he wound up in Venice and in Italy and eventually in Greece. But so what happened is he married a woman, because of his debt. And he was like, he was under stress and he was trying to pay his bills, and he married this woman, and then it became clear to her that he wasn't, the marrying kind, because his debt carried on growing and he carried on partying, and he became worse and worse and worse as a human being, and she fell pregnant, and then before she'd even given birth, they decided to part ways. And so she gives birth to his only daughter, Ada Lovelace, no relation to Linda Lovelace from Deep Throat, but she so gives birth to her, and Ada never meets her father, and then but he leaves England at the time, and a lot of people were saying the reason he left England was because he'd impregnated his own half sister.
Oh my!
And there's I mean the sort of facts around this are very thin. They say that so the baby was born in April 1814, and she'd spent the summer of 1813 at his house. So there's that, and then the baby was named Elizabeth Medora, and he wrote a poem in 1814 with Medora as the title. So people are like, oh, it kind of links up, and this rumor started, and then he leaves England, and to this day it's not been clarified. But those are really the only pieces of real kind of evidence. But it's clear that his ex-wife believed it's possible. So we know that his ex-wife believed it's possible, but the baby's own father, official, the husband of his half-sister, believed the baby was his. So but he leaves under this cloud of suspicion, and he goes and he lives in Italy, and he moves from Italy into Greece, and eventually he dies fighting in the Greek War of Independence against the Ottoman Empire. I mean, he didn't die in the fighting, but he was signed up and he was fighting, and he died of his illnesses. But he was there, and so he's a bit of a hero in Greece for kind of doing this.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, he did live this kind of really excessive life.
Wow. Lord Byron, eh? Wow.
Yeah.
No, I'd still say that the skulls into goblets and
you think it's still it's a bit much. So all right, I'll give you another tip that might lead you down the wrong path or the right path.
Have they made a movie or a series about this dude?
I mean, they really should. He used to throw parties for his university friends where they would come to his thing, and they'd dress in black, monks, cowls and stuff. So maybe the skulls were, like an addition to that sort of theme of his parties. No? Still not convinced?
No, it's too much, man. Even for an Englishman. Especially not even for an Englishman.
Even for an Englishman.
I'm sorry, Englishman.
No, I mean, let's be honest.
Especially for an Englishman. You don't do that sort of thing,
Yeah.
Lord Byron. How dare you? You could get hung, drawn, and quartered. Even in the 1800s for that. No, I'm joking. You couldn't. Yeah. But, no, I'd say, no, that's too far.
So it's 100% true.
Good grief, 100% man.
True. In fact, when his friend Percy Shelley died, the poet Percy Shelley,
yes.
he died in 1822, and Byron requested his skull, and Mary Shelley, who was Percy Shelley's wife, and very famously wrote Frankenstein. Yeah, she said no because she was afraid that the skull would wind up as a goblet. And I mean, it's like that was the only reason she said no, because she herself carried Percy Shelley's heart in a bag for the rest of her for the rest of her life. So her saying no wasn't because she was squeamish or anything. It was just It was just she didn't want Percy's skull to wind up as a goblet, so she said no. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
no,
that
look,
yeah,
no, Byron,
that's
no,
100%
no.
true. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know you just say you're gonna keep it, but I know what's gonna happen at the next part. You're gonna like, whose
Yeah.
skull can we drink
Hey!
ale out of?
That's
No,
right.
I'm sorry, I'm not having that.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna, and I just want it nicely in my bag as I travel with me next to his heart.
yeah, yeah. So
Good
that's
Lord.
yeah, that's what happened. Um, but yeah, very eccentric guy, and eccentric kind of. I mean, the stories around him are insane. You know, like the people that he knew, and this is really just kind of the the beginning. Yes, you say it would make a wonderful HBO
Yes, it
series.
would.
You know.
My word. Well, talking classical stuff, and just to prove to you that I know one or two things about poetry beyond Bob Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel, who to the other
Also
most
poets, yeah.
wonderful
Also
poets
poets, yeah.
of all time. Um, Francis Thompson. I don't know how much you know about his poetry. He was active as a poet in the late 1800s to even the early 1900s.
Okay.
And Bishop of London called his poem "The Hound of Heaven."
There's a funny. I've got a like when you're like, I don't know the poet and I don't know the poetry, but I've got a piece of my brain that's currently
Oh, it's
niggling me
niggling
now, where I'm
you.
like,
Well,
there's
let me
something,
talk a
there's
little
something
more and
interesting
see
about
what
him, yeah.
you
Yeah.
So he, the Bishop of London, called his poem "The Hound of Heaven" one of the most tremendous poems of all time. The
Oh,
Bishop of
okay.
London at the time, in
Okay.
the late 1800s, and his wonderful body of work, which developed into quite religious poetry, even in the late 1800s.
I think I remember why. I don't remember his name.
Yeah,
I remember his name.
he wrote it over a very short space of time when he stayed in a cottage on the Thames near Charing Cross.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, so that is my fact. He throughout his life, he mostly wrote during that little sojourn in a cottage.
So just of what, like a few years?
Yeah, a
is what
couple
you're
of
saying.
years.
So
Charing
he's like a
Cross.
famous poet, but he only wrote for a few years of his life.
Yeah,
I used to
Francis
catch
Thomas.
the train to, because I used to live in the
Really?
southeast of London, so I used to catch a train to Charing Cross Station
Yes.
quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's Charing Cross Station itself is it was a waypoint for the body of and I'm trying to remember who. One of the famous queens, I think, whose body was kind of carried to these 12 points around England, and that was the first one.
Oh my.
Yeah, which is why it's called the Charing Cross. But the quite aside of that, the reason why I think I remember his name is because I think he's one of the people that the Jack the Ripper investigators.
Oh my.
Kind of put as being a potential Jack the Ripper.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's him. And I hope, Dietz, if you would please look this
Wow.
up for me, I would appreciate this.
I
I would appreciate this
because
because apparently what's happened is they've lifted clues out of his poems that seem to suggest Francis Thompson. Is that right? Yeah, that seems to suggest that he may be Jack the Ripper. But obviously, listen, there's been a lot of books about who is and who isn't Jack the Ripper. But is it at least the right time? Am I thinking
I think
of the
so.
right
It's
person?
late
Yeah.
1800s, and Jack the Ripper was 1880.
Yeah.
1890. Yes, and he's.
And then what happens to him after those few years? Do you know? Does he go off somewhere?
Yeah, he fell ill, and his publishers took care of him for a little bit.
So perhaps that's the reason why the Ripper killings stopped. I mean, I don't know if Dietz is going to be able to give us but I, as I say, the second you started saying the names, and then you said his body of work, and I was like, ooh, I think I remember. I remember what it is. But yeah, I mean that makes sense. All right, let me lean into this Ripper theory. Let me take my yes or no entirely based off the fact that he's in the area only for a few years. He's the Ripper, and that's why people think he's the Ripper. And yes, absolutely, it's true.
One day, Warren, I promise you, one day soon, I will tell you the truth.
Oh,
but I've lied again. I'm just having such fun with the lies. I don't know why.
Such a bastard.
It's just such fun. But I was a bit of a dick with my lie construction again, because his Charing Cross sojourn time period was very much not in a luxury cottage on the Thames. He
It's this one of the old, I've changed your daddy detail like that.
Absolutely. You
What
know
a
me so
dick.
well. He actually studied because his dad forced him medicine at the University of Manchester. It wasn't called Manchester back then. It's now the University of Manchester. But then he ran away penniless just to be a writer to London and got, because of his nervousness, addicted to,
Opium?
yes,
Right.
which he would get at Charing Cross, and he would sleep with the homeless people on the banks of the Thames.
I mean, Charing Cross is, like if you say, oh, there's, it was where you bought opium and there was homeless people. Like now, people would think you were insane because Charing Cross Station is right by Trafalgar Square. Like it's central London. It's probably one of the most expensive pieces of. I stayed there once. I did a comedy gig in
Wow.
London, one weekend, and I stayed in that hotel above Charing Cross. That it was £3,000 a night that the client was paying.
No.
£3,000 a night. That's how expensive. Yeah, that's how expensive that area is now.
£3,000 a night.
£3,000 a night. That's how
that's a lot of
expensive. Yeah,
money.
and the room was tiny, right? And it was as small as your penis. It was very, very, very small. Very small. Very teeny tiny. You needed a microscope to see it, Ryan. So small.
It's like that rooms in at Sun City, and you get the Sun City Palace, and then you get the Cascades, and then you get the thing, and then you get the Sun City Hotel.
Yeah, and then
where
the garbage closets.
Yeah, you
The
can
bottom.
literally use the loo without leaving the bed. It's that kind of,
Yeah, that's where they used to put us up when we did comedy at Sun City. Like, oh, you get a free room. Wonderful,
Oh,
wonderful.
nice. There's nowhere to put my suitcase.
If you can't fit in, you just call the front desk and they'll come with a crowbar and they'll wedge you in and close the door behind you.
And plus you have to spoon with Malcolm Ferreira, which is
Anyway, okay, all right. But yeah, so now for you to say that it's the place of the homeless and the opium addicts back in the day is crazy.
And also what's quite beautiful is he felt existentially that in the bottom of the bottom that he was saved by God.
Okay.
Although it really was a prostitute also helped him, rescue him. From
What a
Charing
stereotype.
Cross. Yeah.
What a stereotype. I don't think Dietz is coming through on this.
No, and
Dietz, did you hear us? Nothing on Francis Lindsay and the
Francis Thompson.
I don't know why I got Lindsay there, but so Francis Thompson and Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, so the
Oh, there you are. So there
really,
it is indeed him.
Francis Thompson. He might have been Jack the Ripper.
Might have been Jack the
Bloody
Ripper.
grief.
But, people have written books that basically any major figure from Victorian England who was around at the time could have been the killer. It's been everybody from the Queen's doctor to now poor old Francis Thompson, who was just a regular opium addict.
There was so many prostitutes in Whitehall Chapel. Was it Whitechapel Hall?
Whitechapel, yeah.
Whitechapel. So the other nice thing about him, okay, so the poem The Hound of Heaven is quite lovely. The one that the Bishop of London said was the most tremendous poem of all time. Is a man running away from God, but God just chases him like a hound. I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my mind, and in the midst of tears I hid from him. It's quite beautiful and rhythmical and quite an epic. Even in the days when those epic poems were not to be written, he decided, I'll write an epic thing. That was beautiful. But his poem called The Kingdom of God is quite beautiful. O world invisible, we view the that's how it starts. I can't remember the next line. No. But it does mention that he sees Jacob's ladder, which is that stairway to heaven, pitched twixt heaven and Charing Cross. So that was his moment of being in the pit. And even when he's in the pit, he saw heaven's hand helping him. And he also mentions that, lo, he saw Christ walk in the poem. Lo, Christ walking on the water, not of Gennesaret, but Thames. So not on the lake, sea of So it's quite.
I mean, English people love that, And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? No, they didn't, you bastard. It's Middle East. That's where he was. He didn't come to England.
So
Stop
it's
imagining Jesus in England. It's a
Yeah.
very weird and particular thing that English people do.
Oh well,
Very strange
well,
behavior.
Yeah, the Archbishop of Canterbury is, it's a really holy place,
No, of course. They clearly believe
Canterbury, what was the Canterbury Tales was Chaucer.
Chaucer. That's
People doing their pilgrimage to Canterbury.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah. So Canterbury was always like the center point of religion in England, but then obviously after King Henry VIII, the Archbishop of Canterbury became like the head of the Church of England. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, but good. I think that's enough of religious poetry. I'm gonna go the exact opposite direction.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I'm gonna hit 1950s, and I'm gonna hit beat poets
Ooh.
in America. I'm talking specifically here about Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg, so beat poetry was a very particular kind of.
Are we doing a bit of this?
Yeah, it was that live rhythmic, quite often mind. You just kind of wrote as the mind spoke to you, and yeah, so quite often they wrote on spools of paper that they just kind of write the whole thing. But Allen Ginsberg was sort of a very big inspiration for that whole beat poet scene. Bukowski and all of them, and he published a poem called Howl in 1955 that prompted then President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who, let me remind you, is a former general, right, to say, "It is the first time writing has ever made me weep."
Wow!
Yeah. It's considered the first commercial smash hit poem in America, and it's even had a line quoted on the cover of the Wheaties cereal box. Like, it became this absolute kind of phenomenon, made Allen Ginsberg and the entire beat poetry scene like viable in one poem. Like, he released it and it just created the thing, and that's my fact.
Well, it's awesome. It's whether it's true or not, it is awesome. What I love about, I've got some controversial opinions, and one of them is that when all is said and done, I do think the United States of America is the greatest country on earth.
I
Amen,
mean,
brothers.
basically,
why I say
right,
it.
right. What you are is someone in, say, a small
We're
village,
pretty cool.
a small,
We're number two.
a small village in the south of Russia, talking about the Roman Empire. At the end of its days. Yes, the Roman Empire is at the end of its days, but it's still pretty cool compared to this tiny village in the south of Russia.
Look, I don't like the polarization that's happening in America, but
I love it. I love to see them suffer. I love the collapse.
No, but why I think it's the greatest country on earth, man, is because of the diversity. They've had to get along from such diversity, and that's extraordinary. And what I love about what they've done throughout their history, especially the 20th century, is these little scenes that were created, like the San Francisco scene of
right. So this is very much, this is kind of leads into that San Francisco scene, because a lot of these poets moved to the West Coast, off the back of this scene, and started creating the beginnings of what would become later like folk and this kind of revolutionary attitude. And but
it started with the essence of the art, man.
Started with 1955's poem Howl by Allen Ginsberg, and it started instantly. He released it, and it started this entire new revolution.
Right. And so your fact is that
that's my fact. Yeah, and as I say, the president
quoted on a Wheaties box. The president said it made.
Yeah, it became this massive commercial.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say it's true.
Okay.
I'm gonna say it's true.
It's false.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, the American government handled it in the exact opposite way.
They battened down on it.
So what happened is Allen Ginsberg knew a guy by the name of Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who was a bookstore owner and a Bitpart publisher, and Allen kind of was friends with him and told him that I finished this work of art, and Lawrence said, "Well, send it to me. I'm going to publish it. Sight unseen. Of course I'm going to publish it. You're a genius." And Allen Ginsberg sent it to him, and they printed the first copies in England, and they had them sent. They had 500 copies sent over to America, and as customs kind of cleared these 500 copies to be released, the American government seized them, and they arrested Lawrence Ferlinghetti and
Good grief, man.
Shigeyoshi Murao, who was his business partner from the publishing house City Lights, and they had them up on obscenity charges. And there was an obscenity charge trial that was published. At the time, Life magazine used to do these kind of photo stories, and they did this photo story of the trial, which was pretty much like it being on TV now. Like it's the same thing. And what happened during the trial was that all these academics and poets and critics, they kind of came up and defended Howl as being this work of art. They were saying it's an important work of art. It's not just obscenity. And after weeks, they won, and City Lights was cleared of the obscenity charges, and the guys were released. And that particular thing became the catalyst for Tropic of Cancer by Henry Miller and D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover being unbanned in America. And then off the back of the kind of the sheer publicity that Howl had received from this trial, it sold thousands of copies. It did indeed become a commercial success, but Dwight D. Eisenhower never commented on it. It didn't ever make it on the Wheaties box, but yeah, like it was this. I mean, it went on.
Lies are great, Warren. Don't put yourself down. You're a great liar. Make no mistake, Warren.
That book, which was called Howl and Other Poems, went on to sell millions of copies. It was translated into at least 22 languages that I can see. It was.
Did he become a big voice in the?
So Allen Ginsberg became the main voice of the
the
Beat Poetry Society and a Deep Society. It's your Dead Poets Society.
Dead Poets.
Yeah. It's for that Beat Poets. Kind of movement, and a lot of people did move indeed to San Francisco and LA to become beat poets and to join that kind of poetry scene. With the berets and the black polo necks and the glasses and things. So it's a poem, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the poem because it is a genius poem. It's dedicated to his friend called Carl Solomon, I think. Carl Solomon, and Carl Solomon was sent to a mental institution, and despite the fact that Alan thought he was a genius.
Oh wow.
And it's broken into three pieces. And in the first piece, it's basically about people acting crazy in America. And it's about essentially that first part is about how if you're dealing with America, this broken system that is America, the sane people are the ones who go insane. It's the people who, if you're not going insane under this broken system, then and so the second section is a lot more personal, and the third section is he's actually speaking to his friend Carl. He's talking directly to Carl, but it's very aggressively kind of anti-American society, and it's very aggressively revolutionary, which is why obviously they called it why they called it obscene, and why they wanted to ban it. And this is 1955, so bear this in mind. It is
McCarthy trials and stuff.
So there's all these things that America's trying to become more conservative at the time. So you maybe a message for America now, as it's trying to become more conservative. There's this moment that kind of pushes it on, because it's the poem's a tribute to rebellious artists and thinkers and society, and it depicts the kind of crushingly conformist attitudes at the time as being like greedy, violent, oppressive systems, and it encourages people, and it says to them, like, if you are sane in this environment, you fight back, you kind of and it's the poem that begins something along the lines of, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's like, I've seen the best of my generation slouching through the streets of, it's this kind of, it's a phrase that we sort of know. But here, let me read you just kind of four little lines. It's four little lines. And it's, who broke down crying in white gymnasiums, naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons? Who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking pederasty and intoxication? Who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof waving genitals and manuscripts? who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy. So that's the angle, is who responded to this fucking oppression by writing, by fighting, by creating art, by, and it literally became an inspirational moment that inspired people to put their own stuff
and say it like it is,
Yeah,
and
exactly
use the vulgar expression to draw attention and to
and
express yourself.
As I say, it's quite an aggressive and rhythmic. Yeah, and for me, the defining line from that bit that I read is that we're dragged off roofs, waving genitals and manuscripts. It's the manuscripts. It's not just being crazy. It's the delivering the art with your crazy,
Rebel
fighting
with
this
cause.
thing. That's right.
Rebel with a cause.
Yeah, and that's the angle there. But anyway, so that finally a lie of my own, right? A lie of my own.
That's great. Wow. No, I love that. That's really, really, really wonderful. And I've thought about the Vietnam vibe a lot, and I read it's funny that the chap who wrote People of the Lie, M. Scott Peck, his first book was The Road Less Traveled, which comes from a poem.
Right.
Robert Frost, he was a psychiatrist appointed to do a big study of the Vietnam War, especially that one atrocity by the American soldiers in the village, which was kept quite quiet and stuff. And so, but he said the turning point in USA and the Vietnam War was they'd run out of volunteer soldiers, and so they needed to have conscription. And it's when suddenly you're sending your kid to
to die on the other
they're
side
gonna
of
die.
the world.
They're most likely going to die or get injured and blown up, and it's going to be horrific. Then society got involved, but until then they weren't really interested at all, because there's no stake in the game. And this is why that author M. Scott Peck agrees with conscription, because then there's families have stake in the game, and the voices of citizenry
that's what they said
go.
about the world wars.
Whoa!
I mean, they did eventually conscript people for the world wars, and yet people went. There wasn't this large fight against it. People went and they did it because the cause itself was seen as being just.
Yeah, maybe Hitler and the Nazis was a very obvious enemy, but suddenly the North Vietnamese who are being helped by communists is not such an obvious enemy, and maybe they're tired.
And they're
of
literally on the other side of the world, and
yeah. So that whole period is more and more fascinating for me, even though Hollywood and American media has sort of spoken about it to death. I guess I'm finding it fascinating because I think I'm switching sides.
Are you now North Korean?
Yeah,
is that why the beret finally?
I was all sort of gung ho, like no, we fight the enemy, and you must go and fight. But I'm now seeing that it's not nice to die and stuff.
I mean, I'm hoping that you're
nice
this
to
has been a
die.
very long talk about the war and about these things, but I'm hoping that the poem fact that you're about to do is related to this. Is that right?
Not necessarily.
Not at all. That was just some crazy talk in the middle.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think what I'll do a little bit, which is lovely, is I'm gonna go a little bit proudly South African, man.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, in Matric, our set work poems, this is controversial if you're listening, Mrs. de Villiers. She was our English teacher.
Okay. Your English teacher was called Mrs. de Villiers.
Mrs. de Villiers.
I mean, that's
she's
like
my Facebook friend. Be careful what you say.
No. That's like your Zulu teacher is called Mrs. Jones.
Oh yes, I see what you're saying. Mr. Diaga was our Afrikaans teacher.
Mrs. Diaga was my music teacher.
Really?
Oh, unbelievable! Yeah.
How did
she really got around?
How did she
anyway.
do both? No, Mr. Diaga.
Mr. Diaga.
But I wasn't. The only English poem I can remember from our set work was the Jaguar, and it wasn't particularly. It was just about a frustrated jaguar that shouldn't be caged. But the Afrikaans poems, for some reason, were glorious. I don't know why.
Because they knew that after matric you were never going to study Afrikaans again. They knew it.
Yes, and but listen to Winternacht by Breitenbach. Is it oor? Oh. Ja, I don't know if it's
Say oor.
Oor koud is die windjie en skraal en blink in die doflig en kaal. So wyd soos die Here se genade, lê die velde in sterlig en skade, en hoog in die rande versprei in die brande, is die grassaad aan roere soos vinkende hande. O treurig die wysie op die ooswind se maat, soos die lied van 'n meisie in haar liefde verlaat. In elk grashalm se vou blink 'n druppel van dou en vinnig verbleek dit tot ryp in die kou. I don't even know what that means, that last bit, but it's beautiful. That's Breitenbach. That's beautiful.
I don't understand
rhymes.
parents who name their children. Like my surname is Robertson. I would never name my son Robert. You know, like Robert Robertson would be a crime against humanity. Breitenbach
It's important that
you're
they
making
keep
a-
the family name.
Yeah, but you know, it's like that
There
old
are some
Mnet TV
Afrikaans oaks whose surnames are. I know an Afrikaans guy. His first name is Du Toit.
Okay.
What if
So
it's
he's
De
what?
Villiers?
But
Du
what's
Toit
his
De Villiers.
surname? Oh,
I don't
Dutoy.
know.
He's Dutoy de Villiers.
I'm not sure what his surname is, but his first name is
I mean,
the
if it's
surname.
Dutoy, it's problematic. That's where I'm going with this. You know, do you remember the old Mnet presenter Scott? Like who? What
I don't know what his
parent?
parents were thinking.
You know, the second a parent comes to you as a nurse with the birth certificate form and they filled in Scott, you should erase it and you should put a real name
It's
there.
no time to take the piss.
It's no
time to tell jokes, you
that's
know.
Right. Those parents have forfeited their right to name their own child. That's not correct. That's not delete Brayton and put down Steve. You know, like if he'd been Liam Breitenbach, nobody would have said a thing. But here I am, like 100 years later, making fun of him because his parents are assholes. It's not his fault.
It's like my dad. He's like in Vereniging. There was we lived next to the Down family. Of course, there was Ben,
Yeah.
Neil,
And Ida.
and Ida. But
You know, my parents told me that when I was about 6 years old. That
really,
exact
that
joke.
they lived next to the Down
I
family.
believed it for years. I thought it was
Sorry.
real.
Our generation could hold on to jokes. They
Yeah,
could-
no, but I thought they were telling me a true story. I didn't realize that they were joking with me. Just like when they said that they'd taken my dog to a farm. Do you know that I was 25 before I worked out it hadn't gone to a farm? Do you know that, Ryan?
What did you say? Why did you take it to a farm?
No, you know, they told me it was an idyllic farm and he could run and play with sheep and ducks and stuff. So I was like, oh, it's better for him rather than our complex. That's nicer. You know. And I believed it until I was 25, Ryan. I consider myself a somewhat functional human being. And I never questioned my parents. And just like the Neil and Ida Down story, I never questioned my parents. I just believed them.
You know, my mother was a fantastic liar. She's brilliant.
I mean,
if you
you've
watch
got
it-
a talent because I've
Well,
fallen for it 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I got to we were having this conversation at second break in primary school. I was about 9 or 8, I can't remember. And we're having the talk about, did you know Father Christmas is not true? And it's like, and the guy was like, no, I think it is. No, it's not. Then I said, I know for sure that Father Christmas that might not be true. But the tooth mouse is absolute. No, it was a mouse.
Oh, was it a mouse?
Mouse in my house.
Let's see if we can put a 6 age restriction on this so my son can't listen to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my mother said that the tooth mouse is. I said it's true because what happened is my tooth fell out. I didn't tell my mom, and I put the tooth in my slipper under the bed.
And somehow
Wake up, and there was no money.
gone.
No, there was no money. There was just the tooth, and I was
Oh, was
crying.
there?
I was crying, Mom, the mouse didn't. And she's like, no. Sometimes he's busy. He's late with deliveries. Leave it here in my room and just give him a few minutes and stuff. And then, I don't know, 20 minutes passed. I was eating breakfast. And she's like, a mouse! There's a mouse in my room! Help! And I went, hang on a sec, maybe it's the fucking tooth mouse. And I dash in, and there's $10. Mom! It's a tooth mouse!
$10?
I think so, yeah.
Yes,
10 rand.
My parents listen.
that's a
If
lot of money.
my mom is watching this, you owe me 9 rand a tooth.
Was it 1 rand, your folks?
Yes, it's one big old South African. You know the one with the leaping springbok on it. Now, proper. I mean, it felt like you could kill a man with that money. You know, that felt like a rand was a real thing.
So it's my mom's fantastic dramatic performance that I was like, Father Christmas.
I mean, listen,
I'm not
we
sure
saw it.
about
We
that,
saw
but
it in
that
your.
tooth mouse. for sure.
I mean, I'm a bit worried about the whole tooth mouse concept. Tooth fairy. Where
Yeah,
does
it was a
tooth mouse
No,
come
it was
from?
always a mouse in my house. Poetry podcast. A mouse in my house. Oh, but my Afrikaans poem fact.
Yeah,
Look what all
yeah.
these
No, I
beers
heard
are
you. I
doing.
heard you read the poem. It was
Making-
beautiful.
And it's got nothing.
yeah,
So my fact's got nothing to do with Breitenbach's Winternacht. That was just beautiful. But we had a poem in Afrikaans that were called "On a Tamati Plant." Do you know what that means?
on a tomato plant, right? And I'm not
Well,
a total
basically,
idiot.
2-1.
About a
It's a
yeah,
letter.
about a tomato plant.
Yes.
Yeah, about a tomato plant.
And so the poem was quite interesting, describing a tomato plant. But it was basically the crux of the matter, the line that counted. Once again, controversial statement is it was convincing children not to do drugs.
No, hang on. So you read a totally different poem. I'm getting enraged now, right? Like
Yeah, no,
you
that
read
was
a-
just to
you read
show you
an
the glory of
yeah.
Afrikaans poetry.
And then you talk to me about some cuck
on a
cuck
tamati plant.
poem.
Yeah, it was a matric set work in 1996.
If
in
I
Potch
look
Boys.
if I look up on a tomato plant,
it might be there.
I swear if I don't find it, if
Oh,
it's
please
like
be there.
if you've made
No,
up a
that-
whole
that- no,
this
that-
would be a new low for you.
I'm not even.
This would
Do you
be
know
a
how
new
to
low
spell
for
on?
you. Yeah.
No, but don't look at the.
don't look at the actual words.
Yeah.
No, this thing doesn't even exist.
We studied it in 1996. Mr. Diaga made us.
This is another one of your. There's a ghost at Punch for his eye facts. These things that I just physically, like your English teacher wrote this anti-drug poem, and then you read me Breitenbach and told me his poem was just as good.
Yeah, but
Ryan, there is a word that rhymes with duck, and it is so close to the tip of my tongue.
Kom nou, waar is aan 'n tamati plant?
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Well,
Ryan.
no, it does, man.
It doesn't.
No, so I'm sticking with my fact, okay? On a tamati plant, the crux of the matter is it's about a tomato plant, but the essence of it is convincing kids not to do drugs.
I've got a poem. I've got a fact about a poem, Ryan. There was an old man from Lund. His wife had a hairy. Do you see where I'm going with this?
You-
Do you
I
see-
promise you, it was in Mr. Diaga did it. We wrote matric finals on it.
Uh-huh. Was it one of those? Was it in one of those
I don't know why it's
those
not on the
1980s
internet.
books that the Personality magazine used to release, where it was like, if your child plants, plants themselves outside their garden, or if they paint their room black, or if they have lots of candles, or if they listen to Guns N' Roses, then they're a Satanist. Was it that kind of book that this particular poem came out
He
of?
just gave us the worksheets. I don't know where he got this
what
poem
were those?
from.
What were those books called? It was somebody's
Oh,
name.
Oh my
The-
word!
about the Great Satanic Panic.
GCS. No, we had there was a little bookstore in Potch, that sold these little booklets and stuff. Ooh, they were hectic.
That's right. I
hectic,
think
man.
this particular poem isn't by a Breitenbach or
How do you spell
Ankie Kroch
gedig?
or whatever. It's a made up piece of shite that was submitted to the U magazine that your English teacher cut out, and now
So
I
I
have
saw-
to know facts about, Ryan. I'm doing badly in this episode. You need to bring me real poems.
Yeah, man. What I say?
It
Oh,
doesn't exist,
Dawson.
Ryan. It doesn't exist. It's in your head. It's lunacy. That's what it is.
Well, we're gonna have to go with it.
I'm gonna say it's true. I'm gonna say it's true specifically based on the following. The poem doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, which means that your English teacher wrote it for the specific reason of teaching you not to take drugs.
Afrikaans,
yeah.
Mr. Diaga. The Afrikaans.
Mr. Diaga, sorry, meneer. Mr. Diaga wrote it specifically to tell you not to take drugs. Bit of a killjoy, Mr. Diaga. How do you think he got through the border war? It wasn't through not taking drugs, I can tell you what.
I've never had to verify my fact
Yeah,
before
like,
you
does
told
this-
me whether it's true or not.
I'm telling you it's a lie. I mean, I'm telling you it's true that such a poem was written during the 80s. It was presented to you in your room by your crazy teacher. It did tell you to not take drugs, but I'm telling you no one else outside of your school has ever heard of this poem. Ever. And I
It's so
challenge the
sad.
comment section to
It's
prove me wrong.
ungoogleable. My
Yeah,
gosh.
it's
What do
ungoogleable,
I do
Ryan.
about this? Okay, well, I'm because judge, jury, and executioner in What's the Fact podcast is the person giving the fact. I'm gonna what's that phrase when you pull rank. You want to pull rank, okay? On this podcast, I'm the judge. It's my question. It's my fact. I'm the judge, jury, and executioner.
It's got to be an actual fact, though,
No,
right? It has to be an
it
actual.
is on a tamati plant. Is a poem, and an Afrikaans poem, which is not on the freaking internet,
Yeah.
which we had to
which
study.
is not
in-
good for you. But to be fair,
it's not
Pumpkin Patch has about 3 photos on the internet and nothing else. And Pumpkin
You
Patch
see.
definitely exists.
It did exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to prove that.
I
things-
mean, you know, maybe
this
we
is
will
my
all...
job as a religious person, is to try and prove that things exist. They really do. Where's the evidence? It's not on the internet. I'm telling you, it does. But on a tamati plant, it did exist, and I'm still saying that it was about telling kids not to do drugs.
Okay, good, because that's what I said it was about. I mean, obviously it exists. Your English teacher wrote it himself.
Mr.
At home.
Diago.
Yeah, at home watching Die Man van Staal. He wrote it at home and he brought it to you and he was like, "Listen, Ryan, we're a bit worried about you. The berets are the first sign. We want you to read this poem. It's about not doing drugs."
So you're saying if
I did.
it's
I
true,
already
it's
said it.
true.
I already said it was true.
Well, it's I'm being such an arsehole again. I'm so sorry.
No,
ladies
Ryan,
and
you
gentlemen.
can't make up stuff and then claim that was a lie.
So it's not about not doing drugs. It's about not having sex.
Ryan, the poem doesn't exist.
It does.
You could
because
say
the line which gives it away
uh-huh.
is tomati plant is so mooi, het so groen blare. I don't know what the poem is actually, but then the crux of the matter is, and this is what he said. You know, Mr. Diago mentioned to us toward the end. Oh, the crux line before the end is, "Hou aan 'n bietjie langer bloos." Do you know what that means?
I mean, I know what "hou aan 'n bietjie langer doos" means.
Comma, doos.
Okay.
Hou aan 'n bietjie langer, comma, doos.
Yeah.
No, hou aan 'n bietjie langer bloos.
I don't know what the word "bloos" means.
Means blush.
Oh, I see.
So, so he's talking to the tomato, and he's like,
Ryan, this
just
poem
blush.
doesn't exist,
No, it
Ryan.
does, man. I'm
No,
telling
it
you.
doesn't exist. Deets, I
Oh,
need you to
come
make a
on,
call on this.
come
This poem doesn't
on.
exist. I need to see actual proof such a poem exists,
On-
right? You can't make up poems and then tell me I'm wrong for not knowing them. You know what I mean?
Dietz just said it doesn't exist.
This is an
crazy.
actual fact-based podcast.
Look, a second language Afrikaans examination in the
Right,
Northwest
Right,
Province.
if you can't prove the poem exists,
Oh.
you know what I mean? Like it'd be like me coming here and being like, "Listen, there's a little man that visits me in the night, and he's a leprechaun." And then you go, "No, he's not a leprechaun." And I go, "Ha, he is a leprechaun." You know what I mean? It's totally meaningless. It's not an actual fact.
Okay,
I just,
fine.
yeah.
Well, ja. Nee, dis nie arbei nie. And
Look,
how are
it
you
doesn't
spelling
exist.
Did you have apostrophe N, or are you putting it like English? A.
No, it's gonna be.
I'm taking the
I mean,
piss
you're
'cause
talking to Dietz.
Dietz
He's
is
actually Afrikaans.
He's gonna
yeah.
move me. Oh,
All right. So there is a
Fuck,
poem at least
man.
called "Op die Tomati Plan." All right.
do you know it? Do you know the poem, Dietz?
No, he's finding hints and suggestions that a poem called "Op die Tomati Plan" might actually. that's I believe that's on the internet. Yeah. Anyway,
In case you
Ryan,
didn't
listen,
hear
we're
that,
gonna
Dietz
gonna
says
park
he
this
can't
one.
Find the
We're gonna
poem.
park this one. I hope you get punished as you deserve, because that is filth lies. I'm tired of these unique stories. I mean, really,
Please
go
help
back.
me in the comments.
No,
Please,
don't
mense,
help me.
asseblief, ek vra jou ernstig. Asseblief sal julle asseblief hulle what's comments in Afrikaans? Kommentaar lewe asseblief in die kommentaar boksie onder.
I will accept if enough
Plant was 'n gedig wat ons geleer het in matriek en
if enough people,
Potch.
Ryan, if enough people come on the comments and say that it was a thing, I will believe it. But like you alone, it's extremely given your history, this podcast particularly, of just lying and lying and lying. It's very difficult to believe that this is now the kind of point where the facts are true. You know. I
I
don't know.
suppose it's your turn. I've got a spare one.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've heard of the poet Maya Angelou. She exists. She's real.
I know.
I'm
She's
gonna,
Oprah's friend.
Yes. Well, no. Oprah Winfrey. She was Oprah Winfrey's favorite poet because she had a lot of quite positive Oprah-ish sort of things to say.
Yes.
Her most famous is "Still We Rise."
Ah, yes,
Which
yes,
is
yes.
that you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. And that poem is yeah. That poem is uh, I mean, it's very famous, and people quote it all the time, particularly sportsmen. It's one of those really,
Rousing things.
yeah. And Maya Angelou is very much that thing. I mean, she went through phases in her career, but her late years were very much about being uplifting and helping people and creating messages that gave people hope in quite difficult life. Which is why, at the age of 72, she signed a deal with Hallmark Cards to write 2-line poems inside of their cards, and that's my fact.
No, she wouldn't have done that.
It's my fact, Ryan. It's a fact.
It's a lie. Maya wouldn't have done 2-liners for Hallmark.
Right.
At the age of 72.
Yeah.
So what year was she 72? She passed away, hasn't she?
Yeah, she has in fact passed away. Yeah.
72? No, she didn't do that. Unless they had a Maya Angelou brand of card.
I mean,
no, but still, would she? Man, I'm so confused.
No, I know you believe that this tamati plant thing exists.
Anna bietjie langer bloos.
But yeah, you're right. Maya Angelou, look, she basically broke poetry, and became the first. She did a lot of things as a black woman that people hadn't done before, and bizarrely, and this is true, the first kind of line she broke for black women was she became the first like black bus conductor in the States. Because she saw people selling tickets with those money belts, so she actually dropped out of university and decided that's what she wanted to do, and she became the first black woman to do that job.
I love those money belts. I wanted to become a petrol attendant because of them. When I was small in Vereniging, because
so you and Maya Angelou, something in common. You both loved the money belt. There's something, but there is something deeply satisfying about the money belt.
It was like different coins had different holes, and then if you wanted to give change, if you needed to give 25 cents, you push the button for the 20, boop, and the 5. And
that's right. That's maths. Anyway, Maya Angelou, she wrote for Hallmark at the age of 72.
Did she really?
No. I'm saying that's my fact.
It's
you need to tell me that.
It's not true.
Okay. Are you sure though, Ryan? I mean, you believe that a poem called Anna
Tamati plant.
Tamati plant exists.
Oh, Anna bietjie langer bloos.
Yeah.
Don't shag, because then you won't blush anymore. But as long as you stop, don't shag.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that sounds like a reason to shag.
I just wanted to stop blushing.
I mean, listen, I was one of those kids where I went to school. I was ready to shag today. Just no woman I knew. Yeah, until I was 19. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and I was blushing a very long time, but it had nothing to do with the tamati plant. Anyway, so is this a true fact?
No, it's not true. She did not sign a deal with Hallmark to write 2-liners. No.
Yeah. I mean, she wrote a poem for Nelson Mandela when he died. She wrote a poem for Bill Clinton at his inauguration.
Trial. Okay.
Not impeachment. See what you did there. So it is difficult to believe that she wrote things for Hallmark, but she did.
Goodness me.
So it's absolutely true.
Okay.
Her Hallmark collection is now in a book called Life Mosaic.
All right.
So all the things that she wrote, but they're all these kind of very life-affirming, positive things. And the thing is, now the internet is full of this shit. It's full of this shit. But at the time, it was sort of groundbreaking to get these quite personal, but uplifting phrases. Like here's a birthday card that said, "Love life, love living life, and enjoy the art of living."
Nice.
Yeah. Which now sounds quite trite in the era of everyone creating a TikTok video around it, but at the time it was a big deal. Your life is a masterpiece, live it with passion was another one. And the one that I really liked was courage allows the successful woman to fail and to learn powerful lessons from the failure, so that in the end she didn't fail at all.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, which is really quite nice. Yeah, but so she did in fact do this, and a lot of people condemned her for it when she signed the deal. They were like, "How can you possibly? You're this famous
Shout out
poet.
to the
You're this
man.
you're this." And she said, "Well, no, I'm America's poet. I can't just speak to the people who only read poetry. I need to speak to people in their everyday lives, and this is why she signed the deal."
Rock
So
and roll girl.
yeah, so there you are.
I love the one of hers that says, "There's nothing more tragic than an untold story," which is lovely.
There you
So if
are,
you've got
yeah.
a story to tell, you must tell your story.
Yeah,
Write it
preferably
down.
in the comments because then we get the.
Sure. Keep typing and things.
Ryan, I swear, if your next one is about I'm literally gonna punch you in the dick.
It's not multiple choice time, is it?
No.
Okay, well,
We've
this
got
is,
one more each, I think, and then it's
Oh
multiple
man,
choice. Yeah.
I've actually got so many spares. But I will tell you that I
Hey,
very
hang on.
much-
You have so many spares, and you went with the fucking tamati bush.
Ek
Ryan,
so
the
trots om
rage, the
Suid-Afrika-
rage. Like it's not often I feel
Tamati
rage
plant.
anymore. I'm pretty chill guy. The fucking anger I'm feeling towards you right now for the tamati bush thing. This next fact better be about a real poem, right?
It is about a type of poetry. It is I love the movie Dead Poet Society. We talked
yeah.
about this, but I can't
Right.
remember because I've had a couple of beers. But and I really loved it. And have you seen it?
I have seen Dead Poets Society.
When did you see it last?
Must have been just after school sometime. But when Robin
wow.
Williams died, the hashtag "Oh Captain, My Captain"
Oh.
trended.
Nice.
Yeah, obviously from the famous Walt Whitman poem, which is a real poem, Ryan. Other people, other than you, have seen this poem. They would be able to quote from it.
So my fact is that the Shakespeare play that is featured in Dead Poet Society.
Midsummer Night's Dream.
I was going to say Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, is that your fact?
Boom! Yeah, you nailed it.
Oh, yeah, no, it is Midsummer Night's Dream, and the reason I know that is because my matric set work, my matric
Set work
play,
movie. Oh,
well, my matric play that our drama department put on was Midsummer Night's Dream. So for me, I was basically living your Standard 5 dream. I went to an all-boys high school, and then I did Midsummer Night's Dream.
Were you Puck?
I was not. No.
Oh, who were you?
I was Bottom.
Bottom.
And
he's one of the workers because there's 3 groups of people.
So yeah, he's the one who has his head turned into a donkey, and the fairy queen falls in love with him, and so that thing, and then we'd studied Dead Poet Society like the year before. So then you're doing Midsummer Night's Dream, and then so I don't think I'll ever forget that. But
no, and it's a beautiful scene because he talks about if we shadows have offended,
right.
think but this and all is mended, and
that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear.
This weak and idle theme, not more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck, now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long. Else the Puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's the end of the. It's the end of the.
It's beautiful, man.
And you know what was funny about doing it was it was actually still funny. Like people in the audience laughed. Which is so interesting to see a play that's 500, 600 years old. When you do comedy now, you feel like comedy moves quite quickly. But this play is from the 1600s, and it's still relevant and it's still funny.
Oh wow! And of course, it's meaningful in Dead Poets because the guy who's playing Puck, he did it against the wishes of his dad, who's really pissed off that he never quit the play, and his dad walks in right at the end, and then he does the epilogue with his dad. So it's
Isn't his dad the same actor who played Red in that 70s show, though? Is that a bit
Maybe.
I think it is, and I think it undermines reviewing the movie, if I remember correctly.
Brings a bell.
But yeah.
Oh, nice one. So Dead Poets, Midsummer Night's Dream. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad that you got severely and roundly punished for that tomato bush.
Tomato bush. Tomato bush. Look what your head is at. Look where your mind is.
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm still furious, Ryan. It's not. The flame will burn inside of me for the rest of my life.
I'm going to be rescued by our.
You think so?
Yes, by our watchers and listeners. They're going to come to my rescue and find Anna Tomati plant. Hou aan 'n bietjie langer
I
bloos.
bet you what we find is a photograph out of the U magazine, out of the huisgenoot. Like there's in the letters section, Mariki van Vredesdorp has written a beautiful poem called Anna Tomati.
Dit was eintlik Anna haar dogtertjie want sy was 'n bietjie bekommerd oor haar
Ja.
dogter se verhouding.
Ja, wat
met
'n
haar
slet sy
boyfriend.
is.
Moenie so na aan hom dans nie asseblief, Maritjie.
Yeah, exactly.
Jy kan sê voel, Maritjie, asseblief tog.
Yeah.
Ek
Space
jammer,
for
Jeets,
Jesus.
ek spray
Yeah,
ander hom.
yeah. Space for Jesus. That's a good one.
Oh
I
dear.
mean, which is weird though, because that's what they used to say at those religious dances. You've got to dance so that you leave space for Jesus. Like Jesus is going to slip in, like he's going to be between you in some sort of dirty threesome. Naughty Jesus, naughty. Anyway, my final fact before we get to the multiple choice is about Pablo Neruda, and I don't know if you know Pablo Neruda. He was a Chilean poet, but his poetry is more about real life and about the feelings you get in real situations, and he's got a really beautiful kind of turn of phrase, and I'm sure in his original Spanish, it's even more beautiful. But yeah, like so the one I want to read here a little bit is from his poem "A Dog Has Died," but he wrote a poem called "Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines," which is really beautiful. It's amazing. And "If You Forget Me" also. But this one comes from "A Dog Has Died," and I guarantee you, no other famous poet has written this. He said, "My dog has died. I buried him in the garden next to a rusted old machine. Someday I'll join him right there, but now he's gone with his shaggy coat, his bad manners, and his cold nose, and I, the materialist who never believed in any promised heaven in the sky for any human being, I believe in a heaven I'll never enter." Yeah, and yeah, like he's
Oh,
yeah. So
wow.
he's as I say, writes about kind of real situations that people sort of live through and don't talk about quite a lot.
Oh man, that's pretty potent. That
yeah.
short story stuff with a punchline at the end.
But so no,
It's
this is
wonderful.
this is just a piece of a very much longer poem, which if you have a dog who's died, you should read because it's good. And "Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines" is also, "Tonight I can write the saddest lines. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too." Is one of those also just out of the poem.
Yeah.
He's got a real turn of phrase. But what's interesting about him, and this is kind of where we're heading with my fact, is that when he died, his death certificate said he died of prostate cancer. And then his chauffeur came up with a story that said that the doctor, while he was in hospital, the doctor who was working at the Clinica Santa Maria injected Neruda with a toxic substance in his stomach and killed him on behalf of the new dictatorial government of Augusto Pinochet in Chile. And that he didn't die of cancer. He was in fact assassinated. So that's my fact.
Good grief.
Yeah, and my fact is that
Pablo.
he didn't die of cancer. My fact is that he didn't die of cancer. He was in fact assassinated.
So what decade was that? Do you know?
1980s, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Was Chile a horrible dictatorship in the 80s? I know they're quite an emerging economy and they've done very well in the last 20 years.
They have, yeah.
There's like
I mean, they've freed themselves of Pinochet.
Yeah, and there's gold mines there and all sorts of things. Augusto Pinochet, he assassinated Pablo the poet. No. That is a bullshit. No.
Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting about it is that it is still undefined.
Ew.
But it reached a point. So his chauffeur said that this had happened to him. A family member said they'd seen a red mark on his stomach. And this was enough to then get the Chilean government to say, okay, and grant a right for him to be exhumed and tests to be done on him. And tests were done on him, But it turned and these tests definitively proved that he did not die of prostate cancer.
Oh.
So then they put it in for more tests, and they were sort of like they found a bacteria, a very virulent bacteria, and they were like, well, we're not sure whether the virulent bacteria was, in the ground when he was buried, or in his body, or where it is, but they found it in a molar tooth. And they were like, listen, we can do more studies. This is 2017 now. They're like, we can do more studies. We can find out what actually happened to him. But they have definitively proven he did not die of prostate cancer. So his death certificate is a definite lie. And now the Chilean government is stalling. They're refusing to kind of back things. They're refusing to release documents. They're refusing to.
So it's still an ongoing thing.
So it's an ongoing kind of battle. But what we do know is that he did not die of prostate cancer, and the reason why.
Yeah, what was the motive?
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. The reason why is that he was apparently heavily involved in the Communist Party, and he had political proximity. He was a good friend with the previous President Salvador Allende. So when Pinochet kind of took over, he was afraid that this really popular figure, Neruda, would be able to sway the populace against him. So the belief is that he did in fact bump off Pablo Neruda, just to kind of take care of him, because he died the day before he was supposed to go into exile in Mexico. So it's this really kind of eerie story, and as I say, it's ongoing now because the Chilean government owes the Danish labs that are doing the tests money, and they refuse to pay it, and they're sort of stalling the whole investigation. Whereas initially they'd said, oh well, it needs to be cleared up for our kind of national consciousness. We need to understand what's happened here, and we need to clear it up. But now, for some reason, they aren't releasing the results. So it looks like Pablo Neruda did not, in fact, die of prostate cancer, but he was, in fact, maybe assassinated.
Good grief!
Yeah, the guy who wrote poems about his dog dying.
Oh man,
which is quite a strange. Like he wasn't a political poet. He wasn't writing about revolution. He wasn't. He wasn't any of the beat poets. He wasn't Allen Ginsberg. He was writing about his dog dying, but ultimately he's the one who got assassinated.
So sad. The paranoia of authoritarianism is just dreadful.
Yeah. I mean, Pinochet, dreadful. Let's be honest, bit of a dick. History will mark him down as being somewhat of an arsehole. Anyway, we're on to the.
Are you ready for multiple choice?
Yeah,
time?
We're on to the multiple choice section. Yeah.
Well, I'll open it with a bit of a reading, shall I? Yes, so I'm going to take you all the way to a place called Hell. The Inferno.
Oh, I thought it was your Afrikaans class with Mr. Diago.
It wasn't hell. It was cool. I just have to find that. Yes, the Inferno. There we go. So we're in Canto 33 of
Milton.
Of Dante Alighieri.
Oh, yeah.
Inferno. No, he wrote Paradise Lost. You're thinking of Paradise. No, Inferno, the 9 circles of hell. We're in the 9th circle, Canto 33 of about 36 or 37.
Where Brutus and Judas Iscariot, if I remember.
Just before the beast of Satan is biting the head off Brutus and Judas.
Right.
The last conversation Dante has is with Ugolino and Regeri. So Ugolino was, I think he was a bishop of Pisa, and Ugolino was the strong man of Pisa, whatever that means. And he talks to Ugolino, who's in the worst part of hell, because as Dante's Inferno is, the deeper you are in hell, the worse your sin was. And Canto 33 starts with his mouth uplifted from his grim repast, that sinner wiping it upon the hair of the same head that he behind had wasted. Then he began, Thou wilt that I renew the desperate grief which wrings my heart already, to think of only ere I speak of it. But if my words be seed that may bear fruit of infamy to the traitor whom I gnaw, speaking and weeping shalt thou see together. So he's eating the brain of Regeri, and this is Ugolino.
Okay.
Because they were they fought
they were
each other
both
in Pisa.
messing up Pisa, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But why is he in the worst part of hell? He's a traitor and deceitful, but It's to do with him being locked in the tower, probably of Pisa, with his sons, and he's in the worst part of hell because one of these answers is true. Because number one, he cursed his sons. Number two, he slaughtered his sons. Number three, he neglected his sons. Or number four, he consumed his sons.
I would guess just the kind of act of killing your children is bad enough to be in the bottom layer of hell. So I would say, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. He killed his sons. I mean, maybe it's even neglected. Maybe it's even not even as bad as killed. But I'm going to say he killed them.
But okay, is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
All right,
Lock it in.
well, locked in. Boom, locked in. We'll find out after the break. All right. So let me tell you that the sins. I did a little course online. Got an honor certificate on Dante's Inferno, 6 weeks through university in America. Cost me nothing. But the sins are those three animals: the sins of the leopard, incontinence; the sins of the lion, violence; and the sins of the
Hang
wolf.
on, incontinence. So you shit your pants.
That means you can't control yourself.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Cocaine and strippers, my friend. Cocaine and strippers.
I mean, let's be honest. The best things in life.
So that's the leopard. Then violence is the lion, and then the final. So the 9 are first divided into 3. Then the sins of the wolf is deceit and treachery, and that sort of
I
thing.
see. Okay.
So no, it wasn't killing his sons. It was locked up in the tower, and they were ready to. Then they bolted it, so they weren't going to get any more food. So in other words, you're going to starve to death.
So he
You and your
neglected
sons.
them.
And the sons
But
were
he did
like,
kill them. I mean, once you put someone in a room, if you wall
no,
them
but
up,
he
you
was
are
in there
killing
with
them.
him.
Oh, was he?
He was in there with him. So the sad part of it is they call it the sin of silence, because his sons were like, "Help us, Dad! What's going to happen?" And his heart turned to stone, and he didn't weep. He couldn't weep. He just did nothing.
So
the sin of
did
silence.
his political opponents lock him in the wall? I mean,
And-
that sounds like Dante's got a political motive of his own. He's trying
Yeah.
to justify. Oh, listen, we locked this guy up, but he was an asshole. You know, he deserved to be in the 8th level of hell. He was a bit of a dick. But actually,
I remember you saying when I
yeah.
told you backstage at Parker's the one time that I was doing this course, and you're like, "Yeah, he was this guy who wrote a poem about all his enemies being in hell."
Yeah.
I'm like, quite right. Yeah, that's pretty much all his
I mean,
contemporaries.
that is, I mean, it sounds like he was. The poem is a bit political in that regard.
Yes.
But yeah, okay, all right. So it was
So
what?
sad.
It was neglect, really.
It
Is
was
that
yeah,
the answer you were
and they
looking for?
called it very dramatically the sin of silence. So it's like, because there was no bread for his sons to eat, they would have eaten his words. Like if he'd said,
Wow.
"Look, we're all going to die, but at least we're together," they would have been comforted. But he didn't. He said nothing, and they all died before him. And then he died, and then he wept. But that's the strange psychological tragedy of say something rather than nothing. So when I look at relationships, and even people who are having relationship issues and stuff, if I'm ever in a position to advise them, I always say something rather than nothing. Don't give the silent treatment, or if you do, don't do it for too long. It's cruel. Speak, communicate. Even if you're worried about saying the wrong thing, say something. If someone's grieving because they've lost someone dear to them, and you're like, "Oh, I feel awkward to say sorry for your loss," just say whatever awkward thing you have to say rather than say nothing. The sin of silence.
You know, I feel the rage abating. From the previous. I almost feel, Ryan, like that was deep enough, profound enough, useful enough for people who've made it this deep into the podcast that you almost are forgiven for that
the tomato
bullshit about the tomato plant.
Anna tomato plant, please say something in the comments. Don't say nothing. Say something about you remembered it too from Potchefstroom 1996.
Nobody remembers it,
Tomato
Ryan.
plant.
Ryan, the history is going to damn you in those comment sections. Damn you is what's going to happen. It'll be like, you're a lunatic. None of us remember this, is what people are going to say. All right.
Multiple choice time.
My multiple choice. Why is the poet William Mcgonagall famous?
Man.
And it's this simple. 1, he was a terrible poet. 2, he murdered a more famous poet. 3, he was the barman at the White Horse pub where Dylan Thomas drank away his last few days.
Ooh.
4, it's the real name of poet Walt Whitman. Yeah, William
Wow.
McGonagall. Why is he famous?
The name rings a bell. It
I
really
mean,
does.
is it maybe McGonagall from Harry Potter series? Is there Professor McGonagall?
Is
that
there?
maybe? Yeah. There's a Professor McGonagall.
Okay.
Maybe
I've only
that's what
seen
it
the
is.
first movie. I should really get into it.
Oh no, I don't think Professor McGonagall's in the first movie.
Is it?
I mean, here's how you get hate in your
Quidditch is a
comments.
dumb sport. I'd like to say. I know. I'm sorry if
Ridiculous.
that's blasphemy to people.
Can you imagine if a black rugby ball came on in the last 5 minutes, and if you kicked
And
that
it was
between
about
the
that.
posts, yeah, and if
Forget
you kicked
the
that between the
score,
posts,
just
forget the
catch the
school.
black
Yeah.
one. Oh, no. Sorry,
Stupid
that's fucking
sport.
silly.
Stupid sport.
And
No
there's
one
the
cares.
oak whose job it is just to get the black one.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the actual game. Just go get.
Yeah, there's a
And then-
separate ball, and you have to kick it between the posts. And if you kick it between the posts, it doesn't matter what everybody else has done. Your team wins.
See, this is the problem when a woman comes up with a sport. It's fuck up. I'm sorry. Joking, ladies. Love you all. And no, so I for me it leant toward the last one. I don't think he I think it was Walt Whitman. I don't think it was the barman for Dylan Thomas. I don't think he was what was your first one?
So he was a terrible poet,
No.
or he was murdered by a more he murdered a more famous poet,
Sure, that's hectic.
or he was the barman at the White Horse pub where Dylan Thomas drank away his last few days, or it's the real name of the poet Walt Whitman.
Yeah, I'm actually torn between terrible poet and Walt Whitman. And I'm gonna go with he's a terrible poet.
Dramatic twist of
Yes,
okay.
I've changed.
All right, that's your final answer.
Yes.
All right, you've locked it in.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, he's regarded by most academics as being the worst poet to ever be
Really?
published. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he used to write poems about bridges over the Tay River, and he was published for it. I'm going to read you some of his
Oh,
poetry.
please do.
I
I've got a
thought this
passion
is-
for cuck poetry.
Yeah, I thought this would be.
I
I mean, we saw your passion for the tomato bush. like,
Well,
but here it is. Here. So there was a disaster. A train was crossing the Tay Bridge, and it collapsed, and 75 people died. And it's important that you remember 75 people died when this happened, because this is a piece of the poem he wrote about this particular incident. 75 people died, Ryan. Firstly, in this poem, he says 90 people died. He was wrong. He couldn't even be bothered to get the facts right. But this is a piece. Oh, ill-fated bridge of the silvery Tay, I now must conclude my lay by telling the world fearlessly without the least dismay that your central girders would not have given away, had least many sensible men do say, had they been supported on each side by buttresses, at least many sensible men confesses, for the stronger we our houses do build, the less chance we have of being killed.
Shame.
Yeah. Published poet. And then they rebuilt this bridge, right? They built it, and he wrote a poem about the rebuilt bridge.
Good Lord.
Beautiful new rail bridge of the silvery Tay, with your strong brick piers and buttresses in so grand array, and your 13 central girders, which seem to my eye strong enough all windy storms to defy. So, I mean, he made a career as a poet, apparently. But yeah, most academics regard him as being the worst poet of all time. And I thought that would be a nice way to end it, except that you already dealt with the tomato bush, Kak. Like, you already did the worst poem of all time.
Oh, no, that's a beauty. That's a beaut, man.
Yeah, because we don't come on this podcast to tell the people who listen this deep into the podcast that they shouldn't be having sex with a tomato bush.
Well, no, that's
They
not
should,
what it's
no,
about.
no,
You
no. They
twisted
should
that.
definitely be. They should be having the sex. They should be having all of the sex.
Having the bush, the tomato bush. Yes, and the worst poem ever, because I just love that Vogon poetry in this Hitchhiker's
Yes.
Guide to the Galaxy. It's so wonderful because it's like, if I can release you, or I can ask you, what did you think of my poetry? and then it says, this was their reaction to the poet. That's how the next episode starts. Their reaction to the poet. And they're going, and then he's reading his Vogon poetry with the scrumptious, delicious voyage of thine eye falls so delightfully on the vicious.
But the difference between the Vogon poetry and this guy is this is his best effort. This is what he was doing. Anyway, there you go. That's poetry. That's
Poetry.
the episode on
what a
poetry.
lovely episode. I love poetry.
I believe you probably won this one. I mean, I
don't-
was kind of
because
watching.
of all my lies.
I fell for many of your lies, Ryan. Many
How
of
many
your
points are you deducting
your
for the
filthy,
tomato
filthy
plant
lies.
not being on the internet?
All of them. If it were up to me, it would be all of them. You cannot. I mean, I've told you this before, and it's not like you care. Like I've told you, you can't come here talking about Kit at the Vanderbilt
Vanderbilt
Park.
Park Pick and
Yeah,
Pay,
you
yeah.
can't come here talking
The
about the
ghost of Potch,
Potchefstroom
yeah,
school
yeah.
ghost. Can't come here talking about some tomato, like Mr. Diago and his tomato boom.
Telling you.
Like it's just
Save me.
yeah. They're not facts, Ryan. They're not facts. And what we care about here is what's the fact.
fact?
That's all we care about.
What's the
What's
fact?
the
Thanks
fact?
for watching and listening.
If you're still here, just write hatred for either one of us. Just hatred in the bottom part.
Tomato plant.
Thank you very much for joining us, and good night,
Ciao.
good afternoon, good morning. Who knows?
Wherever you may be.